As protests erupt across Los Angeles in response to a sweeping crackdown on immigrants, U.S. President Donald Trump has ordered the deployment of National Guard troops and U.S. Marines to the streets. The move has drawn sharp condemnation from California's leadership, who call it illegal and authoritarian, and it sues the Trump administration. Videos from the city show confrontations between protesters and militarized police, while fear spreads through immigrant neighborhoods. With federal troops on the streets and arrests underway, the situation in Los Angeles is escalating. Will the troops' deployment escalate the situation? And what are the consequences of the U.S. administration immigration raids? I'm Henny Saif, and this is Think Tank.
Our world is becoming unhinged.
Welcome back. According to the New York Times, protests in Los Angeles erupted following federal immigration raids, prompting President Trump to deploy 700 U.S. Marines and 2,000 National Guard troops to the city, despite strong opposition from California officials. Governor Gavin Newsom condemned the move as a provocation and has filed a lawsuit accusing Trump of seizing control of the state's National Guard unlawfully. Though protests began peacefully, clashes intensified after law enforcement used tear gas and rubber bullets. Over 300 people have been arrested in LA and San Francisco. Trump labeled the protesters insurrectionists, raising concerns he may invoke the 1807 Insurrection Act. California's Democratic leaders have blasted Trump's move, saying that the order to deploy the National Guard was unnecessary and inappropriate use of power.
Protests are escalating in Los Angeles over U.S. President Donald Trump's campaign against immigrant communities, prompting outrage and mass demonstrations for the fifth day. In a controversial move, Trump has deployed 2,000 National Guard troops and activated 700 U.S. Marines in the city. In several scenes, police fired rubber bullets and used stun grenades. Mounted officers were deployed in efforts to disperse demonstrators, some of whom blocked roads and torched self-driving cars. California Governor Gavin Newsom condemned the deployments as illegal, calling Trump's actions dictatorial and un-American. Newsom sued Trump's administration, where California argued that Trump was going against the U.S. Constitution, which has protections in states' rights in deploying the Guard against the governor's wishes. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass also criticized the federal crackdown, warning it could fuel further violence. Trump, however, defended the move, writing on social media that protesters would be hit harder than ever. The protests began after reports emerged that Immigration and Customs Enforcement detained dozens, including legal residents, sparking fear across immigrant neighborhoods. Civil liberties groups say Trump's use of the military violates constitutional protections and amounts to political intimidation. The Pentagon said the Marines remain on standby and could be fully deployed if violence continues.
And to examine this story, we are joined from Washington by Mr. Dan Rene, the political researcher, and from Cairo by Dr. Ashraf Singer over the phone, the world political analyst. Welcome, gentlemen, to Think Tank. Mr. Rene, Trump deployed 2,000 National Guard troops and 700 Marines to Los Angeles. How unprecedented rather, is this in recent U.S. history, and what does it signal about Trump's domestic policy trajectory?
Well, and thank you so much for having me to talk about this today. The fact is that in enacting the National Guard in recent history is something that we really haven't seen that much of, but it is certainly within the confines of the presidential powers. I mean, when President Richard Nixon he used the National Guard to help deliver the mail in the 1970s. So there are any reasons and many reasons that a president can use the National Guard to protect American interests. And if you can do it to deliver the mail, I'm sure you can make the case to that protecting American and federal property and people is certainly a valid use of what's happening here. I fear, however, that while President may be right to do this and able to do this and legally acceptable to do this, the violence and the images that we're seeing out there, he may be losing the emotional war on this situation. It's not about necessarily deporting the criminals and deporting the people that are being violent about these ICE raids. Instead, it's being perceived as those who are innocent taxpayers, people that have lived here for decades, people that contribute to the economy and the community as being targeted. And the president needs to message that better, that they're not going after the people who are contributing to society, but instead they're going after the criminals, as they say, the worst of the worst. But unfortunately, that message is not getting through, and we're seeing more and more protests and more violence out there. And I don't necessarily see a solution at this point other than finding a way to protect Americans and protect American interests and protect businesses and the economy.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Singer, the LA Governor Newsom described the deployment as the act of a dictator. So, in your view, is there a legal basis for the president's use of military force on American streets without state consent?
Both of them, Newsom and President Trump, they have a legal issue about the action to deploy the Marines or deploy the National Guard. So now we are facing what we call it federal versus the state conflict. In other words, the president's decision to deploy the National Guard over local objections point to increasing that friction between the federal and state government. This weekend, unifying the crisis response and reflecting political polarization in terms of what, as a Newsom is reflecting, the division of Democratic Party and unfortunately, that kind of ongoing conflict in Democratic Party and Republican Party or President Trump is still in that situation. Even it's really crucial for the future of the United States. It's really crucial for the national security of the United States. But that friction or that conflict between the federal and the state in terms of their legality of recall or calling, the National Guard or the Marines. This is the point where Newsom declared clearly this is completely against the law, and this is why he decided to sue the President Trump in that decision. I think this is one of the major problems is facing the current situation. Before to talk about the right by ICE to capturing the undocumented immigrants. Of course, President Trump and any person in the United States, he completely agreed to stop the massive immigrants to the United States without paperwork or without legality in the United States. So this is the major legal issue currently now facing what is going on in Los Angeles. But clearly, that gap between Newsom as the governor of California and President Trump that gap is not really helping to solve that problem easily.
Well, Mr. Rene, the Defense Secretary said the deployment is to protect the federal buildings and restore order. Is this justification convincing, or is it a politically motivated decision? I mean, are we going to see more of the state, the rule of state, overriding the rule of the local authority?
Yeah, I think it's a mixture of both. The images that we're seeing on television these days of rocks being thrown at police cars, burning cars, businesses on fire, just this chaos in the streets. I mean, the fact of the matter is that order has to be brought in these types of situations. People have a right to have their voices heard, and people have a right to protest, but they do not have a right to throw rocks at police cars and have this type of damage done to property and to damage businesses and threaten people's safety and lives. That's not okay. And so if Gavin Newsom and local authorities are not going to do that, then it's incumbent upon the president to do so and to make sure that these people and properties and federal assets are kept safe. The people voted for President Trump, and a big part of that was for having him deport some of these most dangerous criminal aliens that have come to the United States. We're not necessarily fighting over the people that contribute to the economy, the people that have come here illegally, the people that have paid taxes here for years and years and years. That's not what this is about. But unfortunately, this has become a very political situation. And if local leaders are willing to see their streets and businesses and police cars burn because of it, just because of their hatred for Donald Trump, it's a sad situation. There needs to be order brought, and there needs to be safety brought in these situations. And this needs to rise beyond politics.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Singer, the protests were triggered by aggressive ICE raids in Latino neighborhood. How do these actions reflect the broader implications of Trump's immigration agenda, especially that Trump also started calling the protesters insurrectionists? So is it even becoming worse?
Yeah, this is one of the the arguments now. It has two faces. The first one is a racial justice and policing, and what we call the immigration policy as a political tool. So in the first point, the rise on undocumented immigrants, especially if they targeted Latino, and this is like 1,000 line under Latinos or minority community. This is what they received that message that they are really targeted based on their background or their racial profiling. So the situation where they saw the police, is dealing with this guy brutally. This, raised that point with that movement is targeting like specific minorities or specific communities in Los Angeles or in the United States, like Black Lives Matter. What really that was showing unresolved in the second issue. The second one, that is immigration policy as a political tool. Some people, really translated that policy by President Trump is against, the immigrants as a harsh immigration enforcement, as seen by critics as not just about, border control, but also as a strategy to just send the force, either Marines or National Guard. And some people, they really translated in the election context. This type of risk really inflaming, the situations among the communities and provoking, the situations where I called unrest. But by the end, the president has the authority to exercise as the head of the executive power. But now what we are seeing is like a huge debate between the federal state really handled. I mean, Newsom and President handled the situation out of that. Now in Texas is really opening a new window that, oh my God, this is a really move in where it's different states where the situation can really heat it up over there. Of course, this is not really what a pleasant movement for President Trump, and it seems to me like it, oh my God, some people call like another deep state is really challenging Trump policy in different arena, particularly the domestic issues.
Mr. Rene, videos showed military police clashing with protesters, some of whom were unarmed. What are the broader implications for civil-military relations and public trust in democratic institutions?
Well, again, President Trump was elected to do a job where it comes to making the American people safe, where it came to deporting many of these immigrants who have been coming here to be drug dealers or to commit crimes. And the fact of the matter is that's exactly what these ICE raids were all about. It's not about trying to get innocent people, taxpayers, just because people are not from the United States is not what they're going after right now. They're going after what they're calling, quote, the worst of the worst. But unfortunately, the message has been diluted by some of these local officials. And so the trust and the clashes that you're seeing right now is based upon a lack of trust. But at the same time, the people that are out there protesting and clashing with military and law enforcement, it's again, no one is trying to take away people's rights to peacefully protest. But again, what we're seeing here are fires in the streets. We're seeing, types of violence that, again, is not okay, that impacts law-abiding citizens, that impacts acts of commerce, that impacts the safety of Americans. And it's not okay to do these things. And so, it's up to the military to bring about some sort of order if Gavin Newsom and the governor of California or local leaders are unable to do that. And the fact that people are trying to fight to bring this order shows that they have been, I guess, convinced of a narrative that is just inaccurate. Because again, these people are here to protect, not to cause problems.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Singer, Governor Gavin Newsom has filed a lawsuit against President Trump over the deployment of U.S. Marines in Los Angeles without state consent. Are you expecting this crisis to escalate into a rift between the federal government and state authorities?
Yeah, I think it's coming to be as a major debate, and certainly the U.S. Supreme Court will handle this issue, because if Governor Newsom will or probably he really file a case or a suit against the executive authority that representing, like President Trump, yeah, the Supreme Court gonna to handle this, and this will be like a major debate where we can define exactly what the President Trump is exercising correctly from the point of law, or President the Governor Newsom have the right to refuse the deployment of the National Guard or the Marines. Both of them, they have like a very strong legal argument that debate. Based on what I read on the Constitution, that President Trump should really get the approval from the governor of California or any governor to send the troops over there if they really need it. And this is the argument that Newsom really presented clearly, that I didn't call the National Guard, I didn't call, the Marines. So probably the executive power really exercise it is right out of the scope of law. And this will be like a debatable issue in coming days till we should control the current situation. But and I don't think was really right that both of them they have a conflict on the current situation now. We need really to contain what is going on in Los Angeles and the other states. This is important for the U.S. national security.
Mr. Rene, sort of the same question goes to you now. Karen Bass, LA's mayor, warned of federal overreach and manipulation. How do you read the consequences of this clash between the federal government and state authorities, and how dangerous is it, especially that the mayor of New York has also warned the citizens of New York not to protest violently, and said that New York is well prepared and ready to fight any violent protests?
Right. Yeah. Legally, the president will prevail. He has the authority to do what he's done. What the White House and what President Trump are seeing, and what we're all seeing on our television screens as we see these acts of violence take place on the streets of Los Angeles, is a dereliction of duty by local officials. The fact of the matter is that there have been dangerous criminals that have been let into these areas by government officials. There are dangerous people that have been allowed to stay there by government officials. And now there are dangerous people lighting fires, threatening businesses, threatening people, threatening lives, disrupting traffic, and doing more and more things out there that have been allowed to do so by the local officials. And so the fact of the matter is if there's been that kind of dereliction of duty by these local officials, then it is incumbent. It is a part of the job of the President of the United States to take this action and to use the tools at his disposal to bring about law and order, and to do the things not only that he was elected to do, but also to protect the interests of the United States, whether it's in Los Angeles or New York or anywhere else. The president has no choice, and he certainly has the legal authority to do so.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Singer, the immigration raids are reportedly targeting also even legal residents and green card holders. First off, are these reports true? Second, is this a violation? If they're true, is it a violation of due process, and what legal challenges might arise from such actions?
This is a very good point, because this is can really raise what we call, the internal divisions and social cohesion. In other words, if the ICE, captured, immigrant or legal immigrants like green card holders and deport them or just seize them, this is really fire the situation clearly. We understand that these events really deepen what we call, the culture and ethnic divided, either in California or in other different states. So when we combine with the economic stress, where these guys they don't have any options, so they can really accept the risk and violence. We cannot really accept these guys to act violently against, even the action by ICE. But that type of actions by ICE, of course, this is increase that level of risk, where these guys really react violently. But I'm sure that either President Trump and Governor of California will come together, see how we can really,
Yes.
how can really they lead to lead that degree of stability in California or in other states before that situation is really get worse. In other words,
Yes, definitely. Mr. Ashraf Singer, the world political analyst, and Mr. Dan Rene, the political researcher. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your insights. We will be following all the latest updates, not just in LA, but the whole of the US. But unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this episode of Think Tank. I'm Henny Saif. Thank you for joining us.